Today, we're going to talk about something really subtle, but incredibly powerful. It's a social dynamic that can make you feel completely alone, even in a crowded room, without anyone ever raising their voice. It's called silent coalition building, and it's all about the invisible architecture of social erasure.
The most striking truth about silent coalition building is that a true manipulator never needs to announce their power. They simply arrange the social furniture so that everyone else ends up sitting exactly where they want them. You know, we usually think of a leader as the person at the front of the room, making a big speech. But in these high-pressure dynamics, your own biological drive for belonging gets turned against you. Your community becomes this psychological wall that isolates you before you even know there's a problem.
So why does it feel like everyone else has already made up their mind about you before you've even opened your mouth? This is the core paradox of what's called preemptive narrative alignment. It's that exact moment your desire to be a team player is twisted into the very mechanism of your own social erasure. It's that sinking feeling you get in a meeting or maybe at a family dinner, that feeling of, well, ambient exclusion, where you just feel kind of cold and out of sync even though nobody's actually said a single bad word to you.
So how does this invisible architecture actually get built? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down today. First, we'll look at the unseen power dynamic that's at play. Then we're going to identify the architects of this isolation. We'll walk through the very specific three-step manipulation process and really get into the psychology of why it's so darn effective. And most importantly, we'll cover how you can reclaim your connections, all leading up to something called the integrity principle. Okay, let's dive in.
First up, the unseen power dynamic. This is all about that paradox of preemptive narrative alignment. Now that's a bit of a mouthful, but it describes a really simple and pretty painful experience. A story about you is being told, and you are not the one telling it.
So let's be clear, the core idea here isn't a direct attack. It's about using your own best intentions as a weapon. Your natural, totally human desire to be part of the group, to keep things harmonious, that gets hijacked. The system basically tricks your brain into thinking that a strategic manipulation is actually a genuine group consensus. You start to believe the weird vibe in the room is proof that you've done something wrong long before any real conflict ever comes to the surface.
So who builds this invisible structure? Well, that brings us right to section 2, the architects of isolation. And we're not talking about some formal org chart here. This is all about the hidden structure of influence, the informal power architecture.
The entire foundation of silent coalition building is built on one key idea: asymmetric information flow. Basically, one person makes themselves the central hub for all communication. They don't have to be the boss or the official leader. They just need to control who knows what, when they know it, and crucially, how they feel about it. They become the gatekeeper of the group's reality.
And look, this isn't some abstract corporate theory. This happens in everyday life. Think about the office gatekeeper. That person who always seems to be the one delivering feedback, good and bad, positioning themselves as the one who manages team morale. Or how about the family translator? You know, the one sibling or parent who claims to know how everyone really feels, which, surprise, stops you from ever talking to each other directly. And in friend groups, it's the social controller, who subtly influences who gets invited to things and who gets left out, redrawing the social map.
This whole process creates a fundamental shift. You get pushed from a state of active connection, where dialogue is open and you speak for yourself, into a state of passive submission. And this is where you start to self-censor. You let go of a perfectly legitimate complaint, not because it's fixed, but because the idea of bringing it up feels way more dangerous than just suffering through it. You choose silence because you've been led to believe the entire group has already decided against you.
And this is the psychological endgame. You are no longer a peer, an equal. You become a managed subject. Your focus shifts from contributing to the group to just constantly trying to get the controller's approval, or even just their permission to belong. Your own social intelligence, your ability to read a room, gets turned into a leash because you're convinced that everyone else sees it differently. Okay, so how exactly is this state achieved? How does someone actually pull this off? That brings us to section 3, the three-step manipulation. This is a repeatable, predictable pattern that takes a group from a simple concern all the way to a locked-in consensus.
Let's walk through this manipulation cycle. It all starts with step 1, strategic confiding. The controller doesn't attack you, no. They share a concern about you with somebody else. Something like, hey, I'm a little worried about Sarah. She seems really stressed. This just tests the waters. Then comes step 2, the narrative filter.
That little concern becomes the only lens people see you through. The controller might then say to you, you know, people are saying you seem stressed, which immediately puts you on the defensive. And finally, step 3 is the consensus lock. Once you feel isolated, the controller presents the group's supposed unanimous opinion to you. You end up agreeing just to make the friction stop. And what happens? Your compliance is then used as proof that they were right about you all along.
So the formula is simple, and it's devastating. Their expressed concern is the tool used to create your isolation, which in turn forces your lock-in to their story. It is a perfectly designed trap that uses social pressure instead of any kind of overt force. And over time, your brain gets conditioned to believe that speaking up directly is dangerous, but going through the leader is safe.
But why are we so susceptible to this? I mean, are we just being naive? No. That's what we're going to get into in Section 4, Why It Works. This isn't about being weak, it's about deep-seated psychological and, frankly, biological drivers that we all have.
This dynamic works because of a fundamental mismatch. On one side, you've got the controller's motivation, what you could call risk-free dominance. They get all the control without ever having to risk a direct confrontation. But on the other side is the target's vulnerability, our deep, very human need for communal stability. We are hardwired to want harmony and avoid being rejected by the group. We often value keeping the peace more than we value speaking the truth. And that gap, that's where the manipulation lives.
And here's the key biological driver behind all of this. It's a real thing called informative social influence. It's the simple, powerful fact that our brains find it incredibly difficult, almost physically painful, to disagree with a group that we believe knows more than we do. The controller exploits this by creating the illusion of an informed majority. You're not just disagreeing with one person anymore, it feels like you're disagreeing with everyone, and that pressure is just immense.
So if any of this is starting to feel a little too familiar, how do you break free? That brings us to what I think is the most important part of this explainer: reclaiming your connections. This is the path back to what we call relational integrity. And it doesn't start with a big fight. It starts with simple awareness.
The very first tool is something called the direct link audit. It's a simple, private mental check-in. Just ask yourself, is the information I have about person X coming directly from them, or is it being filtered through person Y? Am I basically playing a game of telephone with my own relationships? The goal here isn't to start a fight, it's just to recognize if the help you think you're getting is actually walling you off from other people.
Now, from this audit, 3 simple steps emerge. First, just recognize when the information you're getting is secondhand. Second, bypass the mediator. This doesn't mean you need a dramatic showdown. Just intentionally speak to others directly, even about tiny things, a project at work, a joke, anything. The content actually matters less than the connection itself. And third, reconnect. Methodically, one by one, reestablish your own direct wires to the rest of the group. This is how you disrupt the cycle of isolation before it can really take hold. And finally, let's bring this all together with our last section, the integrity principle. This is really the ultimate takeaway from understanding this whole dynamic. Here is the core truth to hold on to. Unity created through secrets is not a team, it's an audience. A real team thrives on transparent, direct communication. An audience, on the other hand, is just passive. It receives a curated performance from a single source. This dynamic teaches us that sometimes the most dangerous cages are the ones that are designed to feel like a safe consensus.
Ultimately, just remember this: your mind is private territory. Just recognizing the pattern and understanding that the anxiety you might be feeling is a perfectly normal response to social engineering, that awareness is the key to your autonomy. The whole cycle breaks the moment you realize you never needed anyone's permission to connect with another human being in the first place.
And that leaves us with one final question to think about in your own life. Look at your relationships, at work, in your family, among your friends. Are your connections direct, or are they being translated for you? The answer to that question could be the very first step toward reclaiming your own story.